So if the playoffs were to start tonight, the Pelicans would be 2.5 games out of the 8th spot and the playoffs. Max Kellerman. Now that Boogie's a Pelican.
Yes.
Are the Warriors in a little trouble?
Are the Warriors in trouble? Like, what is the idea here that because they don't have Bogut anymore, they're susceptible to a team that can play in the paint, that can post up, and now they have a guy who can do that in Boogie? I mean, Anthony Davis, too, is a big, but certainly Boogie can do that. I mean, yeah, that addresses a kind of strategic weakness in the Warriors, I suppose, but they don't have a backcourt to take advantage of it. They don't have shooters. They don't have any perimeter players to go around those two guys. You're integrating a huge new piece in Boogie Cousins. We don't know how that's going to work. I mean, like, a team like Memphis might theoretically give a team like the Warriors problems because they have big guys who can play down low, and they have cohesion because they've played together for many seasons now, and the backcourt, etc. And no one really thinks Memphis would beat Golden State. So is Golden State in trouble because they just took advantage of Sacramento and added a top 10 player to Anthony Davis? No. Golden State is not in trouble. I don't care if they're the 8 and Golden State is the 1. They are not in trouble at all. They are in the opposite of trouble.
They're not in trouble, but I wouldn't be so dismissive and disrespectful towards the impact of this deal the way that you're being right now, because there have been times in NBA history that we've seen it. I remember back in 2007 when the Dallas Mavericks went 67-15 and the Golden State Warriors, led by Baron Davis and Steven Jackson, ran them out of the building in 6 games. What happened in that game? It wasn't that they had more skill than the Dallas Mavericks. Certainly, they were, it was helped by the guard play of Jackson along with Baron Davis, and considering today's league, they're assisted in that regard. But what I remember more importantly than anything else was Golden State straight up punked Dallas. They got in their face and they dared them to do something about it. The reason why I would tell you don't summarily dismiss anything, because even though I believe in the Golden State Warriors and I believe in their skills and I believe they went up against New Orleans, they take them out primarily due to guard play and the fact that all you have right now is Drew Holiday because you don't really have anybody else along with those 2 dudes. You got to remember that playoff basketball slows down. It gets a bit physical, and the weakness of the Golden State Warriors is in the interior. So, unfortunately, in a series like that, assuming both of them are bringing their A game with them, we have to make that assumption just for the sake of argument. If that were to happen, now we find ourselves completely dependent on the officiating and how the game is called. Because if you let them get physical and they take the ball inside, and your lone answer is a significantly undersized Draymond Green combined with Jaja Pachulia, all right, and JaVale McGee, you now have a problem. And that is where things can get interesting. Do they compare to the Golden State Warriors? Do the Golden State Warriors have nothing to worry about? No, because their strength doesn't have to respond to what New Orleans with DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis can throw at you. But go back to LeBron James and how they were ultimately able in Cleveland to overcome a 3-1 deficit. LeBron James takes the ball down low. He plays with his back to the basket. He gets a bit more physical in terms of posting up and whatever. And it dictated tempo. So that disrupted Golden State to some degree because you couldn't get out and run the way you like to and the way you're customarily accustomed to doing so, rather. And so when I look at DeMarcus Cousins with an Anthony Davis, again, a 2-man crew ain't going to beat, Golden State. But at the same time, I do find myself intrigued by the possibility because I say to myself, how would the referees call this game? And Alvin Gentry was the former lead assistant in Golden State who kind of knows what they do. Do you have the horses to do it? If you can dictate and change tempo to some degree, you could make it a little bit uglier, slower, and who knows what could happen, just in terms of making it interesting.
They got a real coach, too, and they got twin towers that are no joke in their primes at a very high level. I mean, each one of those guys is a top 5 talent, Anthony Davis and now Boogie Cousins, whether or not they're both top 5 players.
Right.
What Boogie commanded on the trade market suggests he's not a top 5 player, but just in terms of talent and skill, he might be. I mean, it is tough to find a guy that special. And now they got 2 of them. So I understand if the refs called everything their way, and both guys, because now they also have to play together. I know a Kentucky connection, that's one thing, but now you got to get back on the court. You got to get 2 bigs who neither one plays exactly like a center, nor exactly like a power forward. Like, they're both hybrid bigs. How do you use them both? Let's assume that Gentry figures out the exact perfect way to use them. Everyone else around them plays perfectly. They get all the calls, and their rate of improvement accelerates by the postseason. What are they going to do? Take it to a game 6 if they're lucky? I mean, they ain't getting to a game 7, maybe a game 6, but that means every single thing's got to break their way. This Warriors team, in addition to everything else, is a finely tuned machine at this point. They already have integrated Kevin Durant, and they're killing everybody.
How high could they go in the West?
No, I'd say no further than the first round because they'd be in 8th seed and they have to go against Golden State. And even though we all believe Golden State is coming out of the West, understand that you're playing with house money if you're New Orleans, and if you're Golden State, you're playing with all the pressure in the world. Not just because you're the two-time Western Conference champions, not just because you have a nucleus in place that's already won an NBA championship, but coming this year with the addition of Kevin Durant, and all eyes are going to be on him because, after all, you left Oklahoma City after being in Game 7 of a Western Conference Finals to join this team because ostensibly you want to win a ring bad and you can't do it with Russell Westbrook. All that pressure, you just never know. It can get very, very interesting.
That's why if LeBron gets a little more help, maybe he and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love, if he gets healthy, and J.R. Smith gets healthy, and everyone comes together, and Kyle Korver gets hot, and they get something else, maybe the defending champions can get them in 7 games.
Yeah.
But not this squad.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying to you is that, and I'm not saying the squad itself, but I don't ignore that psychological stuff because in my 20-plus years of covering the NBA, I've seen that happen again. I've seen dudes fold because of the pressure. If you could sit up here and tell me you've never seen a series or competition where a prohibitive favorite has flat out folded like a cheap tent, you know, then come talk to me.
In a best of 7, this would be unprecedented. A team like Golden State. I'll say this, though, in terms of what the Kings just did.
Right.
Going forward, if they hang on to Holiday, or failing that, figure out to get, an undervalued commodity like a Bledsoe or whoever it is, and get a couple of 3-and-D wings. Next year, and they keep Boogie, a lot of ifs, but if they do all that, whether they got a real coach,
he's locked into next year. He's locked into next year. Yes.
Yeah.
Next year, then by the end of next year, you could have a real problem in New Orleans, but not this year.